Oh!
Clean beauty, it's not exactly a skincare idea, it's a lifestyle idea. It's an idea which has all these nuances of being good to the planet, being good to yourself, but while being good, demonizing ingredients and technologies which are decade proven, science-led proven, which have many evidence behind of advantages and very few risks, and simply replacing them with other families of ingredients which are either very recent, very little tested. So in the end of the day, if I want to be more vocal, it's not really that I have any enemies to fight, but consumers ultimately will end up making poor choices, because any choice which is made out of fear, out of desperation and doubt, it's never a very responsible and a very pleasant decision. And I also want to protect the consumers which are using eventually products containing certain ingredients, and it seems that nobody really wants to think about them, because if it falls in their hands, any of these blacklists promoted by the clean beauty category promoters, they will have a hard time trusting that what they are using every day is the friendliest and the most interesting option. So all these ideas of boogeyman are ideas that can actually hurt people and not only guide those who prefer to buy a certain category of products. I don't think we can have it both ways. If you say this is clean, you are implying that over there isn't clean. So shall we make an exorcism? Let's try to evoke these demons. One thing which I think is very interesting, it's when we start going deeper into these blacklists. And I'm using one blacklist of Sephora just to pick one of the main retail players. And one of the lists, it's actually, and a lot of these lists are public, you can find in different formats and different platforms, you will find somewhat different elements, but then there are some common denominators which are repeated. One that always fascinates me is toluene. And toluene, which is a solvent, only used in nail polish. The only product category where toluene could be used, it's nail polish. And toluene comes together with the blacklists of clean beauty, as if this is something which it's present in very general formulation, different forms of galenic, which is not the case. Triclosan, it's another one very interesting. To my knowing, triclosan, which is a bacteriostatic, antifungic ingredient, it's used only for deodorants. As I'm old, it was used maybe for some anti-acne products back then, 30 years ago, when I started working with skincare. But nowadays, I really challenge you to find triclosan in any skincare product. So I really want to say this, because when you have a blacklist, it's meant to be defining ingredients which are of generic use and not specific to certain categories. Otherwise, you should mention that. So when a blacklist talks about toluene, should say applicable to nail polish. When talks about triclosan, it should mention applicable to deodorants. Because any layman, any person who reads these lists thinks, gosh, these are really bad guys, this is a terrible industry which is poisoning the world, the fish, the birds and the girls and the boys, because there are so many ingredients which only the clean beauty is saving us from. Then, alongside with these more mysterious sounding ingredients, there are others which I'm sure they are much more in your ear because they are much more talked about, like mineral oils. Mineral oils in the ingredient list come as petrolatum, liquid paraffin and others, but this first being the most common. I should begin saying that when you think mineral oils in the 80s or the 90s and mineral oils nowadays, we are not talking about the same thing. Because mineral oils today, with hydrogenation, with ultra refining, are no longer comedogenic, so blocking pores the same way they would probably back there in the 80s. Anyway, I'm not advocating mineral oils, I'm not advocating anything. I just don't like this idea of saying that there is no evolution in terms of what an ingredient is after 20 years, 30 years of use of the same ingredient. I should say at Swissline, the brand I develop, we don't use mineral oils already since a few years, but it's actually not because of any damage to the skin, it's because we believe they are less biodegradable, so we have replaced them with more vegetable oils. We are not using this formulation, it's actually something that Swiss authorities are advising, but again, doesn't mean that it's true to say that mineral oil it's gonna block the skin from breathe, from oxygen, like I hear many times. If you want to know and if you check ointments you have home like Bepanthen, probably the products you use for your babies, they are based on mineral oils. And if you ever have a burnt, serious skin situation, you will see that the first two ingredients of whatever healing ointment that your doctor will prescribe you and you buy in a pharmacy are most likely mineral oils. When it comes to preservatives, the names of the bad guys, parabens, this is something which for the last decade has been the most demonized ingredient ever, which by today many brands, including my Swiss line, we had to basically decide for marketing reasons and regulatory reasons to accept removing all the parabens, which doesn't translate into admitting or affirming that parabens were something bad to begin with. Maybe I will dedicate a separate video only to the family of parabens to explain that only isobutyl parabens, which is one amongst many different ingredients in this family, has raised the doubt of safety and security. And then it has dragged all the family together, which, surprise, surprise, it's naturally occurring in some foods, including in foods we associate with maximum health and we classify as superfoods. So bad news, Sephora, parabens are naturally occurring in blueberries. Another fallen angel, phenoxyethanol, and the collection goes being limited and limited, which opens the problem, which is one day what will preserve cosmetics if we go one by one eliminating all the preservatives which for decades have been used safely and without any evidence of problems. So phenoxyethanol, it's the new troubled child in the family, and very interestingly, it's one which is resurging, and I must say that even at Sephora now, clean means phenoxyethanol can be part of the formula as long as it's under 1% in the ingredient list concentration. So this is something we need to keep in mind. You know that all the ingredients, of course, are always listed from the highest concentration to the lowest concentration. So more than the presence of phenoxyethanol, if you have an issue with the presence of phenoxyethanol, if you feel unsure, uncomfortable, if you'd rather not, instead of simply obsessing with the presence of phenoxyethanol, look where it lands, because if it's the last ingredient in the list or before last, second before last, we are talking about a fraction which is part of a raw material and not part of the finished formula. So it means that the presence is an absence. So let's talk about the last one. And this one is going to be my favorite because it's going to give us the chance to pay our honors to knowledgeable, savvy skincare makers such as Gwyneth Paltrow, who with her brand Goop, which now it's even part of Netflix series, so you should learn about serious approach to skincare. Sorry, of course, I'm being very, very, very cynical because basically what you have, it's a misinformation in all its glory, approaching ingredients from lifestyle, beautiful angles, but not necessarily from skin-driven, science-led beautiful angles. So the name of the ingredient that Gwyneth goes after as being the one to ban from any skincare formulation is propylene glycol. Propylene glycol, it's a humectant, which already means capturing water to the skin, but it's mostly a stabilizer in formulation which is used to reduce the risk of textures to freeze or to melt down under different temperature amplitudes. And for that reason, for that capacity of avoiding textures to change, it's used also in antifreeze liquids, like those sprays when you fly and there is snow. Those sprays which shower the aircraft are containing propylene glycol amongst other glycols, because there is a family called glycols, and water and many other ingredients. So what Goop is doing is asking consumers, do you want antifreeze on your face? Meaning that these are synonymous. Instead of propylene glycol being one ingredient amongst others in defreeze, it becomes a synonymous to defreeze. Here we have a pin-sharp example of what I consider misleading campaigns demonizing the ingredients, simply because it's not true that propylene glycol is defreeze liquid. So if we want to take this serious, we should know that propylene glycol, together with other glycols, is used up to 50% in antifreeze liquid. By the way, we're talking about unrefined propylene glycol, which is an industrial grade of the ingredient, and the propylene glycol used in quality cosmetics for human skin is used at around from 3% to under 1%, and fractions, like I mentioned, for the parabens, for the phenoxyethanol, very often they are used as solubilizers for non-water soluble ingredients. So we talk about fractions which come together with the raw materials. So next time you see on a packaging propylene glycol free on a product, it means that someone is trying to fool you. It means that someone is preying on your fear, on the doubt, because we are not talking here apples to apples. Not the grade of the ingredient is the same, not the concentration is the same, and is definitely not a synonymous. So we keep propylene glycol in our formulations. A lot of very performing ingredients are actually using propylene glycol, and even more interesting, propylene glycol, it's used as a solubilizer for vaccines. So a lot of the vaccines which are infused, injected in very young babies are using propylene glycol as a solubilizer, as much as a lot of the pills you can take, you can buy in pharmacies, whenever containing active ingredients, chemicals which are not water soluble, they will refer to propylene glycol as a solubilizer. So there you have it. Most likely, baby vaccines are not clean at Sephora. This is the point we came to, and this is for me to pinpoint and wrap up, repeating as I started that I'm not trying to bash any specific brand. I think if you're curious about clean beauty, by all means you should buy it, you should try it, you should enjoy, and if you think it answers, it suits your needs, you should stick to it. Thank you so much for your time. Hope to see you soon in the next video of this series, You've Been Fooled, which topic will be natural is good, chemical is bad. Subscribe if you think it's time to subscribe. As I'm just new, probably you have to wait a little bit more to see if I deserve it or not, but I hope to have your attention again on the next video. Ciao!